People who have been in a coma, what blew your mind when you woke up? I was in a coma for 4 days. When I woke up, everyone was talking about the baby boy I had. I had lost my long-term memory and didn't even remember being pregnant. My son was at the children's hospital in the NICU. I delivered him via C-section at 29 weeks. All this was due to me having Crohn's disease, I found out after I woke up. My colon had ruptured during my pregnancy. My husband said I was talking like a child when I first woke up. When I woke, I felt super tired, but then the next few days, kind of restless. I remembered one conversation my mom had with a nurse while I was under. After a couple of days, I got my long-term memory back and remembered everything up until my second surgery, then nothing until I woke up. My son was my third surgery. Is your son doing okay? Yes, he was 3 pounds 14 ounces. Now he's 18 years old, 6 feet 4. Thanks for asking. Back in the 90s, my great-grandfather had a stroke. He was in a coma for 3 weeks, and when he woke up, he could not speak English. All he could speak was the Choctaw language. He had learned it when he was a kid because his family lived right near a Choctaw reserve, and he played with a lot of those kids. He spoke it fluently at that time, but forgot it over his life to where he couldn't remember any of it by this time. This went on for around 10 days, and then he woke up from a night's sleep and could suddenly speak only English again, not remembering a word of Choctaw. He was also able to repeat verbatim every conversation that had been held in the room that he was in. I was in a coma for 9 days. When I woke up, I was still on a ventilator. When they took me off the ventilator, my body didn't remember to breathe on its own. I literally had to relearn how to breathe. It took me a few days. I had no natural sense for how long or deeply to inhale, how long to hold it, or how long to exhale. I had to put all my mental focus towards breathing. It was really weird. I'm now manually breathing, so thanks for that. Don't forget to blink. You dick ass. You've ruined my next 30 minutes. I was in a coma for 16 weeks. This was when I was in New York. I woke up and 2 hours later looked out my hospital window. It was October 16th, 2001. I looked to where the Twin Towers were supposed to be. Imagine my surprise when all I saw were crews of people cleaning up rubble from the September 11th attacks. My wife was in a medically induced coma for 4 days. She had a reaction to contrast dye, and her heart stopped for 20 minutes. For nearly 3 months, she was confabulating about her long-dead parents. She would speak about them like they were in the next room, or she would say her daughter or brother called, but they hadn't. Over and over, she thought her mom was alive, then her dad. It drove me crazy having to, gently, correct her many times per day. She would come up with amazing tales about what people, relatives, friends, neighbors were doing, what they said. Truly creative fiction. 3 months later, she began to come back. The confabulation stopped. Now things are reversed. She can remember recent events, but her long-term memories are gone. I don't know what that's like, but it must be awful. She cries sometimes for her lost memories, but overall is doing very well. A good friend of our family went into a coma for half a year. Finally, when he woke up, he was stunned why his wife looked so old. He actually lost the last 15 years of his memory. He knew he had 2 children, but they were babies, and he didn't even know about his 3rd child. And the memory never came back. He skipped from no mobile phones to smartphones to laptops. Everything was new to him. Being stuck in the early 90s, but actually being in the 2000s, there was a lot of change to handle. But learning he missed all his children growing up was the hardest for him. I was in a coma for 9 days. I was probably most surprised by how I had to relearn how to pee and swallow. Also not a change, but I was surprised that if I had never woken up, I'd have just never known, if that makes sense. No light, no dreams, just a big nothing that I'd never be aware of if I hadn't woken up. I don't know what I was expecting. I'm not particularly religious or anything, it's just weird. My mom was in an induced coma for 3 months. When she woke up, she thought the hospital was trying to kill her. She tried to get out of bed and she fell on the floor because she could not walk. She was mostly freaked about how her feet had lost their form. They were humped over from not being used. Every muscle she had to learn again. She couldn't talk well or write at all. She has different handwriting after relearning. She said she hated how perfect her hands looked. Her nails and cuticles were perfect and clean from not being used. I remember trying to brush her hair after she woke up. Almost all of it fell out. She almost died pretty much every day she was in her coma. She had sepsis from a diverticulitis surgery gone wrong. A lot of her hair has grown back and she can walk, but has brain damage that makes her seem very drunk. She is always dizzy, but it's been 5 years now, and her recovery has been miraculous. I was in a coma for 4 days from bacterial meningitis. When I woke up, I was completely deaf. I had to communicate with my parents and doctors with a notepad and pen. Some hearing gradually returned in my left ear, but the right ear is still 100% deaf to this day. My wife was in a coma, medically induced, for 2 weeks. When she woke, she had very wrong memories. They were all based on conversations people had while in the room with her. For example, she thought they flew her to Washington, D.C. for treatment. While she was in a coma, my father-in-law mentioned how he just flew back into town from D.C. on a work trip. Somehow she overheard this while out, and her brain interpreted it to mean she flew to D.C. Even after we explained to her the reality of where she was, it took days for her to come to terms with reality. About 20 years ago, my cousin had a severe head injury from a fall. He was about 20 at the time. He was in a coma for almost 4 weeks. When he woke up, he fairly quickly discovered that his memory was eidetic. He could repeat entire conversations back word for word, and even tell you the date and time you said something. Also, he could memorize images with just a few seconds glance. His memory is still eidetic today. It's annoying as fuck. Whenever he reminds me of something I said in the past, usually something I can't even remember, I suggest that we hit him in the head again. My stepdad was in a coma ICU for about 3 weeks. He woke up and couldn't find his teeth. We looked for a week, completely forgot where we put them. Then he dropped dead at the bathroom sink in the hospital, out of nowhere. They revived him. Couldn't figure out why he could barely breathe. Then the hospital sat us down and showed us the x-rays with his dentures in his body. They forgot to take them out when they put the tubes in his mouth, blocking his air pipes or whatever. So, yeah, we found them though. I wasn't really in a coma, but I remember when I woke up from having my appendix removed, I couldn't read. I was 13 at the time, and I loved to read books, so I wasn't illiterate or anything. I could see fine too, I just wasn't able to read. It only lasted for a few minutes, but it was very weird. A guy I dated for a few weeks in high school was standing at a bus stop when I was driving back to my old hometown to visit my parents. I waved at him, and he just looked bewildered. So, I messaged him on Facebook just to be nice. It turns out that he had no idea who I was because he'd been in an accident and a nearly half-year coma. He somehow woke up with a Scottish accent and had to relearn to walk. His family finally figured out that the Scottish accent was because his ultra-Scottish grandma was with him a lot as a baby, and I guess that's what his brain latched onto. He's now a happy Ren Fair performer who used to be a very troubled guy headed for military service. I guess he's happier, but it really makes you wonder who he would have become. He also kept asking me if I knew why he wore this specific ring. Unfortunately, I didn't. If you've been in a coma, share in the comments what blew your mind when you woke up.